Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. We're on the road today here in Lincoln at Seacrest Field ahead of high school football. Wonderful to be with you. Hail Varsity Radio at Seacrest here. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. We're also streaming on StreamYard, so you can catch the show that way if you like. Facebook and Twitter with ESPN Lincoln. It also Hail Varsity Radio's Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. The stream is there for you. Numbers to get in today with Hail Varsity at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. You can see Elijah's throwback Denver hat if you do log on to StreamYard. It's one of those old school, well, really the classic logo with the big D and the donkey in the middle blowing steam. It's a steed, I'm sure, as Elijah gets closer to the webcam to zoom in on that. But great to be with you. Not quite the road trip for us. I'm just down the road here in Lincoln. We're up in Omaha tomorrow, as you're invited to come see us at the Hail Varsity Club 4 to 6 ahead of Nebraska Rutgers. Watch party up there in La Vista. But a lot to get to with this ball game tomorrow night. We'll spend time with Brandon Vogel from Hail Varsity here in about 20 minutes, 15 minutes to be exact. We'll talk with Vogues about the matchup and his preview, the I-80 preview on the Hurrdat Network, the podcast you got to check out in hour 2. We'll hear from Jeremiah Sirles, Husker great and longtime NFLer. Sirles with us at 5. Gary Barnett talks some college football this weekend with us at 5:25. And then your gambling fix from Veasan Sports with Danny Burke. Elijah, big ball game tomorrow night, big ball game for you, the Denver fan tonight, and just gorgeous weather, a little breezy out of the north here, but high school football follows here in Lincoln when we're done.
Well, I'm in the process of trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my weekend because my Broncos play tonight, the Huskers play tomorrow, which leaves me an open Saturday, aside from the Saturday morning show, which 7 to 9 here locally on ESPN Lincoln. Saturday morning show, and then I have a free day Saturday, and then I wake up Sunday, and maybe I'll watch some NFL. Let's be honest, I'm still going to be sitting on my couch watching football for at least 12 hours each day. But I got to figure out something else to do because my teams aren't going to be playing, and sometimes that kind of ruins the watching experience when you don't get a chance to watch the teams that you want to watch. So I'll figure out what I'm going to do. I know there's a concert at the Bourbon I might hit on Sunday night, so maybe that'll be good, but I'm still in the process of deciding what I want to do.
Beer and wings, my friend. Beer and wings.
It's as simple as
Saturday
that. Okay,
and Sunday.
But get this. We got Sunday night. It's a group called Here Come the Mummies at the Bourbon Theater, and they're being opened up by a guy named Sax Squatch. So Sax Squatch is a guy who dresses up like a monkey and plays the saxophone, and then Here Come the Mummies are this jazz funk fusion group that'll dress up like mummies. That just sounds like a great time. Well,
you do your thing there and make sure the sax playing chimp doesn't throw things at you. Okay, it's always a danger when you go near monkeys. But what's the danger look like in Piscataway? Good video for Nebraska as they boarded the plane and took off to the East Coast. Listen, and this was a good workflow that was put out on Twitter earlier. And it's funny to think about, but really I think this is absolutely the pulse of Nebraska fans, right? It's the workflow of Big Red or Husker Nation. You start to believe again, you get your hopes up, and then you get disappointed. Okay? You won a ball game, and you won a close ball game, and does that carry over? You have a little bit of momentum. Can you keep it? or do you lose it? Was it a one-time thing? I mean, Rutgers isn't a great football team. Nebraska is not a great football team. And that spark that was provided when you had a chance to catch your breath post-Oklahoma, get settled in, Nebraska played well enough to win. They executed. They did their job, and they made some big plays. At stake, I mean, there's a lot riding here. Nebraska has not won a road football game in Big Ten play in 6 attempts. The last road football game Nebraska won, 2020, the air quote champions weekend, where Nebraska played Rutgers, and it was the good Adrian, bad Adrian, the bad first half, the great second half, the swan song of Wan'Dale Robinson, and Nebraska won that thing 28-21. Elijah, Rutgers has lost 20 consecutive home games. And a little bit earlier this week, NewJersey.com put out the must-win edict for Rutgers football and Greg Schiano. I think he's in his 4th year there. But Nebraska's formula was pretty simple on offense. Hammer Grant, get some play action going, and get Casey and Palmer connected in the passing game, and then be sound and be physical defensively. This game comes down to me, what do your offhands do? Clearly the offense is the strength of Nebraska football. The Rutgers defense is top 20 nationally. Rutgers offense is bad. Nebraska's defense was better last week against Indiana. But what are they going to do when it comes to, again, tough man or a tough man's fight, what it was deemed by Bill Bush? So what's the defense do against a prove-it defense do against a prove-it offense? That's those sides of the ball, to me, along with turnover, is going to determine how tomorrow night goes.
Don't forget about special teams, though. That's what Mickey said last week, was that they needed a big play, a big splash play from special teams, and that was a big factor in Nebraska being able to go win that football game over the weekend, despite the fact that Nebraska went and controlled it in the fourth quarter. If you don't block that punt, you don't know what momentum can look like in that first half, especially with how Indiana closed that half. So a question in my mind, not the biggest question, but what can the special teams do against Rutgers? Because this might be the type of game where you're going to actually need, and they needed it against Indiana. They didn't really need it against Indiana. They did, though. If you follow what I'm saying, it wasn't crucial. It wasn't like a one-score game. And a game against Rutgers, this very well could be a one-score game. Well, what can your special teams do to make a big play? Can you hit a field goal that's, on the edge of the range where you don't know? It's a 4th and 4, and Mickey's got that decision. Do I go for it? Do I kick the field goal? Can you knock home that field goal? Can you block a punt? Can you return a kick and set up your offense in plus territory where you have a good chance against a very stout Rutgers defense? It could be a game where the special teams looms large for Nebraska. That's something in my mind. But when I look offensively with this Huskers team, you saw how the body blows of running the football through the first, second, and third quarter were able to wear on that Indiana defense, and how you were able to assert your will a little bit more in the fourth quarter. Do they keep that going against Rutgers, against a Rutgers defense that is probably a little bit more physical than this Indiana team? They embody what their head coach Greg Schiano is, and that's a physical, hard-nosed Big Ten guy. Can Nebraska stick with the running game? It might not be there in the first quarter. Can they stick with it? Can those body blows wear down Rutgers, and can you start to assert your will a little bit more in the fourth quarter? That's how, if you've seen anything as a Husker fan over the past 5 years, I think it's that a consistent run game is what's going to win you a football game in the fourth quarter more than anything else you can do offensively. So if Nebraska can wear down that Rutgers front seven and build a solid rushing attack with Anthony Grett in that offensive line, combine it with some key special teams plays at big moments in the game, I think Nebraska's putting themselves in a great chance to win. And on top of that, something that we talked about during the line change, can Nebraska protect the football? Rutgers is a team that loves getting takeaways, A, and B, capitalizing on those takeaways with their offense. Their offense does well in a short field with how well they run the football. So can Nebraska protect the football and win the turnover battle? That's going to be another big key for me in this game tomorrow night.
Well, you hit on it. The oxygen for the Rutgers offense is turnovers. It is short field. Mm-hmm. It's how things worked out for him against Boston College. It's how things worked out for him against Temple.
I mean, they got a big pick six against Temple that really swung that game in favor of Rutgers. And if they don't get that pick six, I'm not sure if they're winning that football game. But what it did, A, on the scoreboard, and B, to the momentum of that football game, allowed Rutgers to go do it. Turnovers, I think, are going to be very, very big. And they're big in every single football game, but maybe especially so against Rutgers.
They're huge. They're absolutely huge on the road. If you're trying to go do something you haven't done since 2020. If you're Nebraska, we'll get to some of your comments. We'll also hear from Mickey Joseph. He sat down a little bit earlier this week with Rivals and Clint Cosgrove. Some pretty telling comments by Mickey. Jeff chimes in, no matter how this game goes, the rest of Nebraska's season goes, I believe more fans believe in Mickey than they did Scott, so I think it'll be okay. Ted emails in, Chris@HaleVarsity.com. While I'm reluctant to admit this, Husker fans' expectations are so low that Coach Joseph will be welcomed with open arms if he makes it to a bowl game. We've gone from firing 9 to 10 win coaches to hoping to win 6. Yeah, expectations are low. The team's been beaten down. They got to have that belief. They got a taste of it against Indiana last week. Can they get a second kind of prove-it moment on the road this weekend or this Friday night against a team like Rutgers? And, you know, I look at that mantra of belief and being able to coach up, and that's something that's noticeable, Elijah. And we've been through kind of the flavors of the week the last month here, not quite a month since Scott's dismissal, right? We've talked about Aranda. We've talked about Leopold. We've kicked things off with, Matt Campbell. Is he ready to leave Iowa State? Well, the flavor this week, there's been more and more thoughts. All right, Mickey got a win. Team looked completely different. They were pretty competent. Penalties were kind of a nightmare. But other than that, they distanced themselves in a close game. We'll see what Indiana's record is at the end of the season, but you're not going to scoff at a win. I mean, it's not like those are happening every weekend in Lincoln anymore. Really, Mickey's kind of been the flavor this week. There's been more and more, all right, maybe he might be the guy. And, good for Mickey and good for Bush and what they've done so far this season to kind of rally the troops and get stabilized after that bye week.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm seeing here in a comment from Jeff, and I'll put it up on the screen for those following along on the live stream, is that Nebraska isn't Wagner. Rutgers isn't that good. I believe the Nebraska staff can keep building with these kids and win this week. And as you said, there hasn't been a lot of winning in Lincoln over the past couple of seasons, and I shouldn't say I can't believe, but one win against an Indiana football team who isn't all that good this season shouldn't make Rutgers any less of a task. If there's anything that I've learned in the Big Ten over the past few seasons is that there's no easy weeks in the Big Ten. You might be playing a team that's a little bit down, but we even saw it with Northwestern week 1. Northwestern's not a good football team, and Nebraska made them look good. And sure, Mickey and his staff are building, but let's not act like Nebraska hasn't been in previous years looking awesome one week and then looking terrible the next, and you go, what the hell is going on here? So it's not like there's any easy weeks in the Big Ten, despite the fact that Rutgers, they played Boston College close. They played Temple close. But the difference is they went and got wins. And Nebraska played a lot of teams close last season. You could say, well, they were better than their record indicated, but they didn't get wins. They still ended up at 3-9. At the end of the day, Rutgers is still 3-2, and they're still a Big Ten hard-nosed football team. There's no easy weeks in the Big Ten, and every week is going to be a test for Mickey, a new test in the process of becoming the full-time head coach. I'm not ready to anoint him after one game. If he goes and beats Rutgers, I'm not going to be ready to anoint him after 2 games. If he makes it to a bowl game, I'm not going to be ready to anoint him. It's deeper than that if you look at what Nebraska has in terms of their resources, their expectations, their fan support. A bowl game is not good enough for Nebraska in the grand scheme of things. Could it be this season? Is it a big victory? Yes, but I could even see a scenario where Mickey Joseph takes Nebraska to a bowl game and doesn't get the full-time gig. As Mark Whipple said earlier this week, I think the only guarantee that Mickey keeps his job is if Mickey goes and wins the Big Ten West. If he can do that, I think it's his job. But anything short of that, I think there is still a good argument to go bring a new guy in here to go build a new culture and to do something else, because Mickey, he's never been a full-time head coach. he can go catch lightning in a bottle this season and do well, and he's a great recruiter. And could he build things for the future? Yes, but there's still question marks surrounding Mickey Joseph, and it's only been one win that we've seen so far, so let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and say Mickey should be the guy.
Well, I'll say this. Can you get consistency back in Lincoln? Nebraska was consistently good, consistently dominant to the tune of 9-3 at worst, right? And that looks like a dream right now if you're a Nebraska fan. But the way Nebraska went about it, Mickey gets that. Mickey gets how to do that. So does Bill Bush. And that is through confidence. That is through honesty. That is through physicality. And those are three of the things Mickey brings with him to the office every day for this football program. And that's what's been missing, the physicality. How do you go about your work? And Nebraska's bought in, and Mickey said it time and time again. We'll hear more from him with his Rivals sit down. The national recruiting man for Rivals chatted with Mickey. But no, I mean, Mickey gets how to make a winner, or how Nebraska's won and needs to win, and that's through being the tougher team on the line of scrimmage. He has that. That's big. And whether it's him or whoever ends up being the new coach or full-time coach, that's the key ingredient here is physicality if you want to live and survive in the Big Ten. Brandon Vogel's with us. Hail Varsity continues. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Thursday edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Back at his football office, the incomparable Brandon L. Vogel rocking his Bears lid. We're just talking all sorts of hats today. I've got the Coach Osborne hat on. Elijah has the throwback Donkeys lid. And Vogues, did you ever own, and you need to check this out on the StreamYard, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter, ESPN Lincoln Twitter, or ESPN Lincoln Facebook, where you can watch the show. But Vogues, did you ever have the cursive hat like you have on now, but the corduroy version? Did you ever have the corduroy hats back in the day?
I did. I had a Bulls one that was corduroy. I had the corduroy and then just the plain black wool as well. And then I don't know if I completed my Chicago triumvirate with the Cubs one as well, but I probably did. Actually, I know I did. That one was black too.
All right.
Big fan of the script.
No, the script is good. The corduroy hats we thought they were cool at the time. They're all good. The I-80 preview podcast has dropped. Hurrdat is where you go. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, wherever platform you go to. Check out Vogues' preview. What are you thinking tomorrow night, aside from a great slice of New York pizza? I seem to think Elijah nailed it with the road and the turnovers. That's key. But to me, to reiterate it, is what can Nebraska's defense do against a Rutgers offense? I mean, those are both the weaker hands coming into this. As you've analyzed a little bit here, what pops up on the radar for this outcome here? What speaks to you?
Yeah, but it feels similar to last week in that regard, in that, it's strength when Nebraska has the football, and a little bit of weakness when Rutgers has the ball. And I guess point in Nebraska's favor in my mind, they're at least coming off a good defensive result. I mean, easily the best defensive result of the season, 14 points allowed on the defense itself, and a great performance on third down. So we'll see if you can carry this over. I mean, I think the general setup here, this line opened at a pick'em. Last I saw it was about 3.5 for Nebraska, and where that midweek line settles usually tends to be about right most of the time. And I think that's fair to expect. Like, if you set this game up where there's not going to be any turnovers, both teams have to go 75 yards every time they have the ball, I think Nebraska pulls away from a Rutgers there just because it has more scoring power. But football games aren't like that. So a lot of this might come down to some of those plays that are tough to plan for.
Brandon Vogel is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, another thing we talked about last segment was how important it is for Nebraska to establish a running game against a team like Rutgers, because they like to be physical, Rutgers does, and if you can out-physical them at the point of attacking and develop a running attack that's going to be big for you in the fourth quarter of what could be a potentially close game. So did you see enough from the offensive line against Indiana to have a little bit of confidence moving forward against a team like Rutgers, especially with the rushing attack?
Maybe a little bit. I still think it's a pretty big question mark. I was a little bit shocked to look at the Indiana box score after the game was over and see Nebraska was at basically 3 yards a carry on a night when Anthony Grant went over 100. Took him 32 carries to do it. And that's interesting to me from a kind of football perspective from Nebraska. Like, if you're going to be willing to ride a guy like that and he can hold up, that's something that was a frequent complaint at Nebraska over, not just the previous Frost era, but even leading up to that. So that's interesting. I think you're right. This Rutgers defense, I think, is top 25 in yards per play, 33rd in passing success rate. Ohio State only threw for 160 yards against this team last week, but it rushed for almost 300. So Rutgers is up down 62nd in rushing success rate, so just about average. So if you're looking at both phases of that with that Knights defense, I think testing them via the run and how much success you can have there tells you how much Nebraska has the potential to control this game.
What's your feel on Travis Vokalek going back home, so to speak, to Rutgers? We saw how key he was in Ireland, especially on third downs. I mean, just a security blanket there. But tight ends in general, can they be a big part of tomorrow night in the passing game? The world's going to be focusing in on Palmer. You need a complementary piece, whether that's Alante or Washington or Omar. But the tight end, that matchup, if you can get it, is an advantage against a linebacker or a safety.
Yeah, I think that's a key point there. This Rutgers secondary is good. I think it's where the majority of the talent on the team is. It's a veteran group at some spots, and they've got 5 guys back there that they'll play, basically 5 starters. And they've had 6 interceptions on the year. So, if they're going to be in a ton of nickel, if Nebraska's not able to make them pay with the run game, that becomes a challenge for that Nebraska passing game. And one of the potential answers there then becomes, can you create some matchup issues with a Travis Vokalek? He only had 2 catches since he's come back from injury in 2 games. So he's, in addition to just the storyline of getting back to what was once his home field, I think being able to have some success is important for Nebraska. And then it would make a nice story if that plays out.
Brandon Vogel's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, when you're looking at this game being on a Friday night, how much is that factoring in for you, especially when you look at what both these teams are coming off of? Nebraska, a big momentum-building week after winning against Indiana. As for Rutgers, they got pretty beat down by Ohio State. And as you mentioned, almost 300 rushing yards for the Buckeyes. And I think back to what was said a lot about the 1990s Husker teams, where they said that they wouldn't beat a team twice because they went out physical the team so much. They were beat down, they were bruised, and that next week it was a struggle for those teams to go out and be able to compete in a physical football game after what Nebraska did to them the week before. And could you see that being a factor here for Rutgers, especially considering the fact that it's on a short week? Or is that not a big concern to you? Because Friday nights are weird, but it's only one fewer day of preparation.
Yeah, only one fewer day, and both teams have to deal with it. If I had to lean, I would lean slight edge Nebraska. It just seems, and we'll see. Greg Schiano at his Monday press conference, there was a handful of guys that he basically said, we'll see. So put them in the questionable category, and so my impression is Nebraska might be coming into this just a little bit healthier, having had that bye week 2 weeks ago. To kind of look at personnel in a fresh way. A guy like Malcolm Hartzog doesn't have a ton of miles on his tires yet. And that can be a good thing if he's going to continue to be a part of things. So, yeah, that's kind of how I handicap that one. I think it's not going to be a huge thing. It might even be offset by the fact that, if this remains a game, and I think it probably will, into the second half, you got that home crowd. It's been a while since Rutgers has won at home, but they've been traditionally, over Schiano's entire span, been pretty good there at night. So we'll see. But if I had to choose, I would take Nebraska on this one, just coming in what looks like a little bit healthier. Though we'll see when we get the actual. I guess we don't get an injury report, but when we see who's out on the field warming up for Rutgers.
Brandon Vogel with us, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine. His book with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion. Follow him on Twitter at Brandon L. Vogel. Steven tweets in when it comes to the coaching search and the interim tag being lifted, what Mickey needs to do to make that happen. But when it comes to the Big Ten potentially doing away with divisions, does that influence whether or not you go a different direction? Because you're going to need to be in that top three, arguably, for the Big Ten race to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I think it does, but it's hard to know in exactly what ways, because if you're hiring now at Nebraska or now Wisconsin, based on the current setup, I think, and this has been a painful lesson for Nebraska, it's been one that Wisconsin has been able to avoid through multiple coaching changes in this current division setup. It just takes a different kind of football in the Big Ten West as it's currently as it currently sits, and Nebraska has struggled with that. So looking at it from that perspective, I don't think this is necessarily one where you're like, well, USC and UCLA are coming, so you got to be ready to recruit at or above those teams' levels. I mean, that's important too, but it's more, maybe going forward, Nebraska isn't playing Northwestern, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, which a lot of years feels kind of indistinguishable in terms of the type of football they play. You're going to have a much more varied schedule, I guess, is the takeaway there for me.
Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, we got about 2.5 minutes here before we got to say goodbye. And I want to ask you about the Mickey Joseph factor. It's been a popular name among fans this week that, Mickey took the first step against Indiana to being the head guy, and people like what he's saying. And I want to ask you how much you think that's going to factor into Trev Albert's decision at the end of the season. If Mickey's able to win over the fans and he's the popular pick, is Trev going to have to take that into consideration whenever he's making his choice for Nebraska's next head coach?
I think you have to look at it. You have to include it as a factor. I'd be surprised if it was the deciding factor for Alberts. I think what this team does over the next 7 games, and a big part of that is wins and losses. It's a lot easier if Nebraska goes 5-2 over the remaining games than 2-5 to consider that option. But I think it'll be more what Trev sees kind of internally, like how he, moments like, and granted this was kind of made for social media, but there was some genuineness to it too. Just the moment in the locker room after the game against Indiana, seeing those things like that, we're never going to be able to really get into and talk about on a radio show, but Trev sees them and everybody around him sees them. So those things I think are important. There's an example and a counterexample for any coaching hire you want to make where, you went and did this and it worked. Well, here's one where it didn't work. You can look at it, hiring an interim. Ed Ogeron won a national title and then was out, but hey, worked for Dabo Sweeney, an assistant wide receivers coach who didn't have any head coaching experience.
No, can you get the guys prepped and ready? Mickey's preaching toughness. They're practicing toughness, and Mickey can recruit. I mean, you're going to need to have some Jimmies and Joes when SC joins the league, when UCLA makes their way to Lincoln, and then, your job is to be competent in the West, and if the West goes away and it's one big pot, you got to beat Michigan and Ohio State, and yeah, they're tough, but they have some dudes. They got NFL guys at the skill spots. Vogues, will check in with you on Saturday morning for the weekend edition. Enjoy your football tomorrow night.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Good stuff from Brandon Vogel. We continue on Hail Varsity's presented by Currency.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Thursday edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Hunker down here at Seacrest Field in Lincoln, just off of A Street. Lincoln High and Lincoln East get going tonight locally here on KFOR. I'll have the play-by-play of that gorgeous night for football. Perfect day for you to get in touch with your friends at Red Zone Tickets. Selling fun since 2001. Do you need tickets? Do you have tickets that you can't use? Red Zone Tickets buys and sells tickets to all types of events. We're talking Husker football, Husker volleyball, NFL action, Creighton hoops, and, of course, concerts, theater performances, and the CWS, RedZoneTickets.com, where you log on. They're located in Omaha. They're local. They're great people, and they have a A-plus Better Business Bureau rating. They are your local source, and they have a 100% guarantee on all orders. You'll receive authentic tickets and experiences you'll never forget. Cross it off the bucket list. Create those memories that last a lifetime. Do so with your friends, your local source, Red Zone Tickets, RedZoneTickets.com. Numbers to get in at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. You know, what's your momentum meter right now for Mickey Joseph as head coach? The needle's moved, right? You get a win, you're impressive, it's nice. Matt chimes in, if Mickey can get us to a bowl game and maybe a bowl victory, I'd love to see what he can do with an entire off season. Brandon, Mickey's a player's coach, a guy who can teach these kids how to believe in themselves and compound on wins, and it's that dog mentality. So right now things are good, but another test awaits for Nebraska tomorrow night with a really tight point spread. Gary Barnett next hour, his thoughts on the Nebraska-Rutgers matchup, some Big 12 action this weekend. Jeremiah Sirles 20 minutes away. So Mickey sat down with Clint Cosgrove of Rivals, and some good thoughts here in an interview from Mickey, some excerpts from that was on social media a little bit earlier today. And let's hear from Mickey himself, specifically the Nebraska job. Elijah, we've talked a lot about the Nebraska job, its pros, its cons, and the reality that Trev Alberts knows in Lincoln, where it's storied, there's support, but when it comes to wooing a coach, it's a tougher sell than it used to be in Lincoln. And it's not just following the legend thing. I mean, you've been away from the main stage for quite a while, and when you've been on it, you haven't performed necessarily. But here's Mickey when it comes to the Nebraska job and its perks.
Start with the fan base. The fan base is still here. I remember when they were 3-8 going into the Iowa game last year, and when I was at the other place, we were 5-6 going into the last game. They had about 90-something thousand. Nebraska did. I don't know what we had. I'm not going to say any numbers, but they had 90,000 plus, and they were 3-8. And so the fan base is still here, and the support is still here, and also the resources are still here. We're building a brand new $68 million facility. You know, $168 million facility. Okay, so the resources are here. We have a great recruiting budget. We can send our coaches all over. Now we just got to be able to put the work in and go get them. But the love for the state that they have for the football team is still there. And it's still a great place to live. You know, when you're a teenager and when you're in your early 20s, because you're the face of everything around here. You're a superstar. So it teaches you how to be humble and how to get ready for the next level, because you're treated like a NFL player while you're here.
Mickey Joseph on why Nebraska is still a good job. A lot of points there and a lot of teachable moments in Lincoln, Elijah.
That there is. And I like his point. Not necessarily about the fans. We all know that the fans are here, but how you can sell it to a high school kid saying, like, yeah, if you want to be ready for the next level, I know that the results haven't been here in the past couple of seasons, but the fans are still here, and they're going to prepare you how to be an NFL player. As soon as the results start coming, as soon as we start getting the talent through here, you're going to be more prepared than anywhere else you can go in the country just based on what kind of attention you have. It almost sounds like listening to that quote that you're sitting in a living room with Mickey Joseph and he's trying to recruit you. It sounds like he's pulling that straight from a recruiting pitch. And I think that was really, really interesting to hear that the head man say it like that.
More from Mickey Joseph with his Rivals sit down. This, when it comes to, are you the guy? He was asked, why are you the right man for the Nebraska job?
This business works on W's and L's. So when we made the change, it was a quick change. You know, I woke up Sunday morning, I wasn't even expecting it. I just seen the call from the AD and I didn't answer. I went on by my business because I said maybe he's trying to go a different direction with me. You know, but you know, just being a player here, coming here in 1987, playing for Coach Osborne, I understand the transition of the athletes when they come here, especially your African American players. You know, it's a different world, but it's a great world. You know, it's a great world to live in. And it's a great world for them to come see. Because when we got to go down south, you know, we're gonna go get the best players from down south, and we're gonna be very aggressive in Louisiana, as you know. We're gonna be aggressive in Louisiana. So my thing is bringing them up here, you know, understanding, knowing what O Street's at, okay, and Vine Street, knowing what T-Town's at, knowing what South Lincoln's like, you know, just knowing the lay of the land, and know when a kid gets up here when he's going to get homesick. Because I got homesick about the third week. You get homesick about a third week when things slow down. So if they would tell a kid, you know, hey, I've been there before, I've been through the shoes. So I can share a lot of my stories with the kids that's on this team right now, you know, about how we did things and things I had to do. Like I told him, I said, you know, Coach Osborne, if I miss class, I had a punishment run at 5 a.m. So if you miss class here with me, you got a punishment run at 5 a.m. So my thing is being real with them, letting them know that, understand that, you know, Nebraska, okay, where's Nebraska at? And, you know, but get them to also know that this is a great place to come play football and great resources, and it's a great way to get them ready for the NFL. And then you're going to get your degree. You're going to graduate.
Mickey Joseph on the Nebraska gig and the experience of being a Husker player. And laying it out, he hit all the parts, man. Didn't quite get to West O or the North Bottoms, or 16th Street, Greek Row. That's okay. He hit T-Town. He hit South Lincoln. He hit O Street, right? So yeah, he can totally relate with being a guy in Lincoln that's wearing that in on his helmet. We'll hear a little bit more from Mickey Joseph, what he's had to fix in the short term and the mindset with this football team for the second half of the season. And interesting comments here as we're on the stream as well. ESPN Lincoln, Facebook, and Twitter. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. I think Matt chimed in with an interesting question. You picking Mickey or the field? You can take Mickey or hire whoever you want, a personal favorite. We'll wind down this first hour. It's Hail Varsity presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding down hour one, Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow. We're here at Seacrest ahead of Lincoln High and Lincoln East High School football Thursday night under the lights. Reminder to get buckled up. And using your seatbelt saves lives and prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up, a message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. And we're presented to you by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Elijah's Broncos in action tonight against Indy. The Twitter video was a awkward forward pass from the 1930s, and that was a representation of what to expect tonight between Denver and Indy on offense. It may set football back. Elijah's glaring at me right now on the StreamYard. I hope Russell can cook, man. I got him on fantasy tonight. A few more thoughts from Mickey Joseph. Let's squeeze that in with his sit-down with Rivals National. Specifically here, the short-term fix here for Nebraska football here as he's taken over as interim.
So what I gave him a voice. If they didn't like something, they can come to me, walk in this office and say, Coach, I don't like it. And Trent, our center, the first time, we had a night practice, and we turned around that morning. He was waiting in my office, and he said, Coach Mick, we can't do that. We don't have enough recovery time. Well, guess what? I didn't do it again. When our linebacker said Saturday, hey, Bill, don't call that again. And he never did. So they got a voice right now, so they feel like it's their team. Because I explained to them a player-driven team is a really good football team. We had a player-driven team when we won the national championship.
Best year ever. We could have sat in, and people think we just rolled the ball out and we played. No, those kids worked, and that's the way we're working now. We bring a physicality to practice. We tackle it in practice. We block it live in practice. So we're going back to what Nebraska was based on and was Nebraska DNA, was being physical. So when that end came out the tunnel, when they seen that end on the helmet, they know it was going to be a rough day for them if they didn't bring it. But if they brought it, they know we wasn't going to back down. So my mentality, like it's always been, is very aggressive with a lot of confidence and encouraging the players. And I asked him this morning, I gave him a quote from Deion Sanders. I gave him a quote, Deion said, bet on yourself. Bet on yourself. When you look in the mirror, believe in yourself. And I thought that was real, because that's one thing. He's one of the realest guys in the world, that Deion. So, I do pay a lot of attention to what he says, because he says some real stuff, and he can say some things we can't say, and that's good, because, I wish I could, but you know how that go on this side. So, but I'm just telling you that the kids have really bought into what we're doing. The coaches has bought into what I wanted to do, but what I wanted to do is make sure we get back to good old blocking and tackling, and we physical. And if we physical every play, then we're going to give ourselves a chance.
Got to do it, man. Got to be tough in college football, and you got to get them ready to be tough, right? We'll hear a little bit more from Mickey next hour when it comes to the second half of the season. A guy who's been tough on the line of scrimmage through his career in the NFL and at Nebraska. We'll get his take on the O-line, some of the changes we saw last week and moving forward. Jeremiah Sirles, Husker standout, longtime NFLer. He'll kick off hour 2. Gary Barnett next hour. Hail Varsity continues. We're presented by Currency.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Into hour 2, we're still here at Seacrest Field, Roadshow Thursday. Friday, we are at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista. Watch party, Nebraska Rutgers, as you're invited up. Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. We've missed talking to this guy, great Husker and longtime NFLer, to kick off hour 2. We say hi to Jeremiah Sirles. Find him on Twitter at Sirles71_HSKR. Sirles, how the heck have you been?
I'm doing well. I'm in a Best Buy right now because my computer decided today was the day it wanted to die. So, always fun just to try and end your week with a couple grand.
Well, that's how it tends to shake out. So are you going with the giant monitor? Are you going with an iPad? What are you shopping for?
We'll get the iMac. I have the iPad and the iPhone and the whole bit. So just make it so they can all talk to each other. At least that's what my wife said. So happy wife, happy life.
That's fair. That's fair. But the iMac, it's not known for its gaming potential, Sirles. And I'm not saying that you're a gamer, but you got kids in the house. Maybe they're going to be playing some Modern Warfare here coming up. It's there could be better options if you're going to be, well, you stream. At least you used to.
I don't stream anymore. Ever since Baby 2 popped out, my streaming days fell way down.
Well, there you go.
I guess, yeah.
So get a big old screen is what we're telling you.
I got a big old screen, double monitors. It's going to be a nice setup because now I got to move my whole office because now we have Baby 3 on the way, and so moving the office from. Thank you. So we're doing a whole bunch of honeydew projects. Even though the baby's not due in April, There's a lot to do between now and then.
Pretty soon, Sirles just going to be in the closet with 7 monitors and an extension cord, and there you go.
Just got the handle on the top. Perfect.
Yep, there's no doubt about that.
You in the checkout line right now?
Nope, I'm walking out right now.
Okay, good enough. Jeremiah Sirles with us on a computer road trip. So what did you like with the offensive line, Sirles? Let's go to Indiana and what travels to Rutgers. Let's focus in on the big guys up front.
I loved their ability to protect Casey. That's a big thing in this. We had the strip sack, but, I thought that they did a better job in protection. The guy that I thought came in and played extremely well was Hunter Anthony. Hunter Anthony's a guy that people have been wondering, why hasn't he been playing? What's going on? And no one knew the answer, but he got thrown into the fire with Bryce Benhart. And, with Mickey Joseph, he said, he's going to switch things up, give new guys opportunities. And he had a great opportunity, went out there, made the most of it. I'd expect to see him start again at right tackle. Turner, on the other hand, can't punch people in the face. Just can't do that. I loved his finish. I loved the way that he played there at left tackle with that nastiness. But he's got to be a little smarter because, man, you're not going to win a lot of games with your third-string left tackle.
So tell me a little bit about that transition for Turner, where he moved from left tackle back into left guard. Now he's back out to tackle. Is that something where you expect some learning pains as he goes back out to that tackle position, or is this like putting on an old pair of shoes that still fits, where it might be a little bit different than the pair of shoes you've been wearing for the past couple of weeks, but it's still comfortable?
It's not as much the learning issue that goes back and forth, but the thing that is happening, and you're seeing it happen a little bit more and more, is it's hurting his development. Development as a young player, you want to stick them in one spot, right? And that's what they want to do with Teddy. That's what they want to do with all these young players that play early. I was fortunate enough as a young player, I only played tackle. Now, granted, I played right and left tackle, but for the most part, I only played tackle, and that allowed me to develop and grow and hone my skill set there in a tackle. Bouncing from guard to tackle, you're learning completely different skill sets. You're learning completely different timing. Timing your punch, timing your footwork, the closeness of the defenders, working with linebackers, the combination block is all different. Turner is a young player that got hurt, didn't play in the spring. You're just going to see his development not go as quickly as someone that could stay in one position longer.
Sirles, what have you liked about Mickey taking over?
I love the energy he brings. I see him on the sideline, and he's just such an energetic guy. He brings so much energy. He brings so much passion to what should be and what it needs to be a good football coach. And so, I love that for him. I love that he's not afraid to come in and make changes. It takes a lot of guts to fire your defensive coordinator after 1 week on the job, but he knows what to expect. He knows what's expected out of him, and he knows what he's going to expect out of his players, and he's not afraid to make the tough decisions. It's looking like he truly is playing the best that will play. He doesn't have a ton of politics. He doesn't have a ton of that as far as what he has to do right now. And I think that the biggest thing for him is he just knows that he has to win football games. I think that he doesn't have a ton of pressure on him to go out and go undefeated. So I think that team feels that lack of pressure. I think there's something to be said of the pressure that the team felt under Scott Frost. There's the buyout and all that stuff that happened again. Last year, they were playing a little bit like, man, if I don't play well, my performance isn't well, my head coach might get fired. You could feel that tension, that ball of tension through the whole team. And, I think with the lack of pressure on Coach Joseph right now and freedom, everything, the whole team's kind of embodying that. At least that's what I saw in Indiana. Time will tell how that goes. But initially, that's what I saw. And I think that Mickey embodies that. The team embraces that. Who knows what this team could pull off.
So I want to get your take on what you saw from the defense against Indiana and whether their improvement can be sustainable moving forward. Mickey said he told Ty Robinson and the defensive line to play a little bit more free, and they were able to get home to the quarterback with a little bit more success. You saw guys flying around. The defense didn't look like their feet were stuck in the mud, if you will, as much against Indiana as they did in previous games. So do you think it's sustainable? It's something that can be giving you hope moving forward, or is that a defense that was just going up against an undermanned Indiana offense?
A little bit of both. I'm not ready to anoint our defense back. They've struggled mightily, and the one thing Indiana didn't do is they didn't try to run the football, and everyone else that has had success. So, until I see us go to toe-to-toe with a fully equipped team that can run the ball, pass the ball, do the whole bit defensively, and we can match that performance, then I'll start to say we're on the right path. Indiana is a decent football team. I don't know if I'd call them a good football team, but they throw the ball over the yard, and they went on that quick passing offense and Shoot, I think they had more 3-and-outs that lasted a total of like 13 seconds than anything. So when a team can sustain drives and run the football and go 1st and 10, 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, and then convert and do that over and over again, that's where the depth of Nebraska's defense gets tested, and that's where we've really struggled at the beginning part of this year. When Ty Robinson and Feast and those guys have to go out up front, the backups come in, and there's a bit of a drop-off, more than you'd like from the 1s to 2s. So those guys really, the backups, the depth guys, the rotational players on a defensive line have got to step up in order for me to think that we can do this on a week-in, week-out basis.
Sirles, let's talk about what's going on at practice, and Mickey's making it physical. They're hitting, they're tackling, and I'm interested in your take on the preparation that is now going on, because it sounds like it's a different practice style and mentality, and it feels like there's a better chance Saturdays to be prepared for Saturday with what Mickey's doing.
I'd like to think so. Sometimes when you do the same thing over and over again and it just keeps giving you the same result, it means the definition of insanity, right? And that's kind of what we feel like probably the whole Scott Frost era was just the same thing for 5 years. So close, so close, so close. I think Mickey recognizes that, and he comes from a program that won a lot of football games at LSU. He's been a part of programs that have won a lot of football games. And, he's probably implementing some of those things that allowed them to win those football games. And change is good. Change is good. Shakes things up, makes guys refocus, makes guys look at how they prepare, how they watch tape, like the pace of practice, the pace of everything. Change is good, So I think that them changing all that's going to really work benefits for them. But again, time will tell. We're going against a Rutgers team that we should beat handedly. I agree, I think. But at the same time, we got some really big games coming up against really quality opponents.
Sirles, from a player's point of view, Rutgers game being on a Friday night, how much do you think that's going to impact how this team comes out? It is different. Leaving on a Thursday, you're missing some extra classes, and in the era post-COVID where you can join any class via Zoom, it's a little bit different. But the feel is just completely different surrounding a Friday night game, at least how I see it. But how do you see it as a former player yourself? Do you think the guys are going to feel that this one is any different being on a Friday night?
Oh, yeah, the short week is huge. The nice thing is coming off the bye week into the short week, the bye week into a game into a short week, you're not just rolling the gauntlet through. But it is about, these short games are about guys that recovered better during the week, that prepared better during the week, and were able to get the game plan. Early short week, you see it on Thursday night. It's like, well, who stayed the healthiest during the week on the NFL? That's who's going to win the football game. So a lot of that has to go with it, too. But the big thing is Friday night on the road in Piscataway, New Jersey, or wherever the hell they go. Not a very exciting time. You got to bring your own energy. When you go on the road and you go in a hostile environment, you can feed off of that energy from the opposing team, even good or bad energy. Same with a home game. When you go to kind of a sleepy stadium and no one's really there besides the parents, maybe a few friends, and you're trying to play a game and you don't have much energy, you can allow a team like Rutgers to stick around with you. So this team, I'm really seeing if they can bring and match that energy that they brought onto the Memorial Stadium last Saturday on the road with them. And if they do, I think they'll be just fine.
Worst place to play on the road when you were at Nebraska?
Oh, Northwestern or Purdue. It's a toss-up. The nice thing about Northwestern is our fans travel so well. The Purdue one is just, that place is an absolute bleep hole.
Sirles, why does Nebraska get it done tomorrow night?
They get it done tomorrow night because they continue the energy that they had on defense. They get some takeaways, and then they just keep feeding Anthony Grant that running game. Continue to put the ball in his hands, and then Casey Thompson takes care of the football. I really do think that tomorrow's going to be decided over the turnovers. That's one thing that Nebraska's got to make sure we do is not turn the ball over and then steal possessions by taking the ball away and giving this offense some short fields.
So if you're handicapping it now, let's say Nebraska gets the win tomorrow night, give me an offensive and defensive MVP that leads to Nebraska's victory.
Offensive MVP is going to be Trey Palmer. The defensive MVP is going to be Nick Henrich.
Nick Henrich, interesting. What about
he's
Nick?
Elevated. He has elevated this defense since he's been back.
Tell me how.
He's elevated because you can tell that the connection between Luke Reimers and Nick Henrich is an unspoken connection. Very much I see it when you have players that just know each other so well. They're not worried pre-snap about who's lined up where, whose assignment is here. Nothing against Ernest Hausman. I think he's a really good young player. but you're spending a lot of time getting him lined up and making sure he's assignment sound besides just playing. You know, Luke and Nick have played so much ball together. They have an unspoken thing. They can worry about some of the other younger guys around the field instead of that linebacking core. When you have a solid linebacking core and communications on point between those two, everything just operates so much smoothly.
Sirles, to the NFL we go. Thoughts on your Vikings, thoughts on your Bills?
I mean, my Bills, everyone wants to say they anointed them kings week 1 and 2, rightfully so, and then they've struggled the last 2 weeks. But, you know, I think that's a team that is decimated by injuries right now, and they're still finding ways to win. You know, when the Bills have everyone healthy, and it's Micah Hyde, they're all pro safeties out for the year. But, you know, you give the Bills a chance to get fully healthy, they're the best team in the NFL. There's no doubt about it. My Vikings, on the other hand, I don't know. We have a Kirktober coming this way, whether it's spooky Kirktober or all-star Kirktober. There's no telling, but there's always a Kirktober where he either rises or falls. So it all depends on him. You know, the Vikings defense is not very good. It's very different. They're playing that shell. Let's see if we can keep it all in front of us, and then we don't type of defense. So, you know, it'll be interesting. You know, I think that they have a chance to win the North with the NFC North being not great. You know, but I think the Bills are the kings of the AFC, right close next to the Chiefs, too.
And then the Broncos right there with them as well. I mean, the Broncos have just looked phenomenal this season.
Yeah, and the dumpster fire.
Oh, you didn't have to say it.
Well, I just wearing his Denver hat right now, hoping to God they don't lose to a running gameless Indy tonight.
Hey, Sirles said earlier with Thursday Night Football, it's a war of attrition. Whoever stays healthier. That means Sirles is taking the Broncos, right? They've stayed somewhat healthier.
Because Jonathan Taylor might not be healthy.
Well,
it's going to be an ugly game no matter what, because the Broncos are down Javonte Williams and Randy Gregory too. It's going to be an ugly football game tonight.
I mean, every game that Denver's played this year has been ugly. They're not fun to watch.
Oh.
They're not. I'm sorry. Denver's not a fun team. When the Broncos play the Raiders, I refuse to watch.
Sirles is protesting. Did you get anything on your hunting trip?
I did not. No, I did not get anything, but I had a buddy who shot a bear and who shot a cow elk. We saw bears, we saw moose, we saw mountain lions. We saw it all. So it was a great trip, great time with Dad in the woods, but unfortunately I came home empty-handed again.
So was the bear just within waving distance, or was there a safe? The bear stuck his head into the ground blind that my buddy was sitting in, and he pulled his bow back and shot it. So it was an interesting experience. Were you in that blind as well, or no?
I was about 30 yards away from him when I heard the whole thing go down. So I was not, but when I saw over and saw the whites of his eyes, I knew something happened.
Oh, man. Well, adventures with Sirles in the woods. Jay, be good.
No
Best
doubt.
to you and your family. Thanks for the time today.
Absolutely, guys. Sorry about the phone call in the store, but I appreciate you guys, and go Big Red always.
There he is, Jeremiah Sirles with us, Husker standout NFLer at Sirles71_HSKR. So where you find him on Twitter. Yeah, that's not something that happens every day. A bear sticks his head down in the blind. I'm thinking Revenant.
I've heard good things about bear meat too. I've
never tried it.
Not anything I necessarily want to go hunting for, but if somebody offered me, like, hey, I got a little bear tenderloin here, I'd try it.
I've only done the whole deer jerky, deer sausage. I love buffalo, but yeah, I need to figure out somebody that can get some wild game and I can throw it on the smoker. Not interested in going on the trip. But I'll cook it for you. Speaking of Buffalo, Ralphie looking for a head coach. We'll check in with Gary Barnett, the 32nd anniversary of the fifth down game. Coach Barney on the way. Hail Varsity presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. We say hi to the Hall of Fame coach, Gary Barnett, Northwestern and Colorado. Coach, how's the week?
Well, pretty interesting week going on here in Boulder, Chris, as you might imagine, after we become one of 5 schools who have let their coach go early in the year. So, fortunately, I guess, and probably planned this way, we have a bye week. So we named Mike Sanford, who was the offensive coordinator, as the interim head coach. And So they've got 2 weeks to get ready for Cal next week, and so it's it's a lot of buzz around here. It's sort of like, when I refer to things that just seem to hurt all the time, I think about having a pencil stuck in my eye. And so every time you touch it, you can just imagine what it feels like. So I think we finally removed the pencil from our eye right now, and everybody's just breathing a little bit better, but we have no idea where it's going, but there's hope on the horizon. So just like you guys, there's hope on the horizon.
Well, and you know what? Nebraska was able to get it done and distance themselves in a tie game against Indiana. I don't think Indiana's great, but Nebraska did something they haven't done, and that's win a tight ball game. And the buy-in for Mickey's pretty high right now, and I don't think it's just caught up in the emotion, what he's telling the kids they're doing, but, Coach, they're seeing it work. At least they saw it work for a win.
Yeah, and special teams were really important in that game, Chris. They did a great job with special teams, and their numbers weren't great, but they third down conversions were great, and they threw one pick, but the penalties, they got to eliminate penalties as an issue. But I thought they played, other than 2 turnovers and the penalties, I thought they played really well, and they played better defense than they had. And you're right, Indiana's not the best, but they can do some things, and they're a solid team. But the win's what's important. You had just great chemistry in that stadium. It looked great, it felt great, and a lot of energy on the field, a lot of energy in the stadium. So that was a good win.
I want to get your thoughts. Are you surprised about Wisconsin and Coach Christ?
Well, a little bit. What I'm sort of getting the drift is that Leonard may have been close to, the Nebraska job, and they may want to have just sealed it and kept him there. That's sort of what I'm hearing. I don't know you never know if there's any truth to that, but certainly Leonard would be a guy that would be a candidate at most of the jobs that are coming open. They're going to come open, and so it's sort of like they knew that's who they wanted, and might as well make the move now so they could take him off the table. So very, very likely that could have happened, but again, speculation.
Well, and I mean, Leonard's a name that's been out there, and in talking with Coach Alvarez in the past, he's like, Jim's ready for a head job anytime he wants. And as far as, if you're Nebraska looking at a coordinator, would you look at a Leonard because of his age opposed to the gettability of a Leipold? And Lance has kind of tried to stamp out any speculation of him back to Wisconsin. We talked out loud this week, all right, you give Leonard a chance to win the job, or you make the move so you can keep him. You give him a tryout or trial, and then if things don't improve, you go move on to Lance because of his Wisconsin connection. What do you think right now, Lance and KU? He's a super loyal guy.
Yeah, it's way too early for all that stuff. I mean, Kansas could implode, right, and all of a sudden revert back to what it was. I mean, they lose that quarterback, and that's a different looking team. So anything can happen. It's way too early. We're not even halfway through, and so I think everybody will just sort of watch what happens in the next 4 to 5 weeks. You can tell again, but I think it's way too early to call any of that stuff.
Gary Barnett's with us, Varsity Radio. We're talking some of the coaching openings and, with Nebraska and their movement forward. Tell me what you think of Friday night. We've got a Friday night affair out in East Rutherford, or check that, Piscataway. And it's Shiano, it's Rutgers, and I think Vegas says 3 right now. Rutgers isn't great, but, man, they're tough.
Very good defensively. They, that'll be a tough ball game, and they don't move the ball very well. They can run it a little bit. They don't throw it very well, but they play really good defense. They're one of the top defenses in the country, and especially against the rush. So, this will be a hard get on the road. I don't think that's a real tough place to play.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get inspired playing there, but it's, it is a Friday night, and that'll bring out a good crowd. And so, Nebraska's got to keep it going. I mean, Nebraska doesn't have an impressive win, Rutgers is 3-2, and they don't have a real impressive win. But the 3 points favored, I think I don't know. I think Rutgers playing there, this is a really too close of a game to call, and if Nebraska commits the penalties they did last week, they're gonna struggle with this team, because Shiano's a heck of a coach now, and he's got a history there, and so he gets them up to play. So this should be a really good football game between two teams that need a win.
It looked a lot easier than it was last weekend with Rutgers and Ohio State, Coach. I mean, that thing was 7 apiece or 14-7 heading into halftime. So, Rutgers is going to make you earn everything. I'm worried about the turnovers. Nebraska's been pretty good turnover-wise, taking care of the football, but the O-line's still a concern for me with Nebraska, and they had to do some movements just because of performance, and then of course an ejection.
Well, there was, is he ejected for the first? That happened in the first half, didn't it? So
yeah,
he missed
second
that whole
quarter.
game.
He missed the second half. So I think he's back.
He can play. He can play. Nebraska didn't run the ball very well against Indiana, 67 yards, and that's, it's going to be tough running against Rutgers as well. So you're right, turnovers, penalties, and they've got to be able to move the football. But I don't know if Rutgers can move the ball very well. But big thing is, can Nebraska's offense win this game? And we'll have to wait and see.
Coach, it's the anniversary of the 5th down ball game, and don't shoot the messenger here. I saw Coach DiNardo respond to something on social media. What do you think, thinking back to that day in Columbia?
Well, I can tell you this. All of us have a clear conscience about that whole game, because absolutely no one, and people can say what they want, no one knew that was a 5th down, because the chains and the clock said 2nd down. And Coach McCartney, I'm standing right there, I'm in the huddle, I'm calling the plays, and I'm standing next to Coach Mack when he says to the official, it's 2nd down, is that right? And he said, yes. And so he told him what we were going to do. He said, we're going to run a play, then we're going to get up and spike it, and then we're going to run one more. And he says, if you let them hold us down and we can't spike the ball, you got to let us have a chance to get up to spike the ball. And that's just what happened. We ran a play. We tried to get up. They were holding us down. They blew the whistle, let us get up. We spiked the ball. We ran another play, and it was a touchdown. So, I asked our quarterback, Charles Johnson, after we got the 1st down and then spiked the ball the next play, Missouri was trying to get their goal line defense in. The ball was on the 3 or 4 yard line. And so they were trying to get a timeout called. And so we spiked the ball and then ran a play and called a timeout. And then as we came over to the huddle, I looked up and I saw 2 on the boxes and changed. And I said, what's that? He says, well, I think Missouri, they said our first play didn't count because Missouri called a timeout. Ooh. So that was what we all heard. And so we said, okay. So we didn't even think about it. So, we certainly wouldn't have spiked the ball on 4th down if we knew about it. So anyway, that's our story, and we're sticking to it.
All right, what happens in Lawrence, TCU, KU?
Oh, boy. I'll tell you, TCU is a good football team. I don't think Lawrence can win this game. Kansas is 7-point underdogs, and I don't know. I mean, they're on a roll. They got game day. The first time we ever had game day at Northwestern, there wasn't any way we were going to lose that game, and we were playing Iowa. So By the way, I think that's the only time it's been there. But so Kansas, TCU's tough. This could be a heck of a football game. I think I'd probably take Kansas in the points, but I think TCU wins the game.
Tennessee at LSU. Maybe a look. No such thing as a look ahead, but they're down in the bayou before Bama comes in. I
like Tennessee.
Okay.
I like everything about Tennessee. I like their coach. I like their quarterback. And LSU's, they're still trying to figure out this new coach and everything else. So I like Tennessee down there. Utah at UCLA. I can't believe Utah's a 4.5-point favorite in this game. UCLA is playing really good football. It's at UCLA, which makes it not a hard place to play because they don't get anybody to show up to the games. Utah's really good and very physical, but I like UCLA in this game at home. K-State at Iowa State, -2. Oh, boy. That's a heck of a game. Really good football game. Iowa State lost a heartbreaker. They had 3 chances to beat Kansas last week and couldn't do it. I'm going to take Iowa State at home. Okay. Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, enjoy your bye weekend. I may be leading on you here down the road here for some used car advice. Okay, Chris. Good talking to you. Good stuff from Coach Barnett. Gary Barnett with us on Hail Varsity here at Seacrest Field. And Barney's had a lot of cars. We've had that car conversation with him. And Junior keeps scouring the internet for used foreign automobiles that have turbos. And then he gets slapped down with the insurance quote. We have a great insurance agent. Shout out Ben Bolte. But, there's going to be a money pit vehicle. Elijah, what did you drive for your first car?
Chevy Impala, 2008. After the minivan, that is.
Okay, so you had the minivan and then you had the Chevy Impala.
Mm-hmm. Good first car.
Yeah.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency here at Seacrest Field, getting ready for high school action, Lincoln High and Lincoln East. No high school betting with Danny Burke from VSiN Sports Network. The Pride of Chicago joins us at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Danny, how's the week? Thanks for the time.
It's good, guys. Yeah, appreciate you having me. We got a victory week here post-Nebraska game. It was a little ugly for a second, but you wouldn't expect anything less. But, hey, you figured that was their get-right spot, having some time off. Mickey Joseph and the new defensive coordinator getting time to really instill what they want to into these guys. And, look, now you got another winnable situation on Friday against Rutgers. So as gross as the record may look and what we've seen has made you feel, I'm actually feeling decent about Nebraska this week.
Let's dive into the numbers here. First and foremost, -3, Nebraska favored. How do you feel about it when you look at some of the numbers, when you've done the analysis? Do you think it's going to be one of those fourth quarter games again, or does Nebraska maybe have a little extra in the tank here to cover with ease? Or do you think this thing goes the other way? Tell me what you feel.
So, yeah, like I said, I do like Nebraska in this spot, and I would understand why there's some hesitation for bettors to lay over a field goal with the Huskers. But, again, I can't stress enough how much I feel like that break with the new coaching staff in line is going to benefit this Huskers team. We still know they have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. The defense still scares you, don't get me wrong, but the good news is you're going against a Rutgers team that up to this point has only passed for 161 yards per game, whereas Nebraska, with Casey Thompson, looking pretty strong at 260. It isn't ideal, and obviously I'm sure you guys speak on this a lot, but it's not ideal that this Nebraska offense can come out there and wow you and woo you and, be like, oh, my goodness, Casey Thompson's elite and this offense looks great. Where's this been? And it happens in the first drive of the game, and then they just completely disappear. They can't really get the run game going. They have all these incomplete passes. It just turns sloppy, and you're like, what happened that we saw in that first sequence? Well, I'm sure a lot of it could be those scripted plays, but you got to do a little bit better of in-game managing and being able to have consistent movement with the ball. Even if you're not scoring on a lot of these drives, at least control the time of possession so you can give your defense a break and time to recoup. So That's what I think the biggest difference maker to look at for Nebraska in this game is going to be. And if there's a chance to do it, it's got to be against the Scarlet Knights. I'm not envisioning it to be a pretty win. And you know what? Maybe they do push on 3. But here in Illinois, I'm seeing a money line price of, I think it's minus 139 minus 139 for Nebraska. Look, seldom if you have a team laying 3, do you get that cheap of a money line price. Usually it's at least minus 160 or minus 165. So I went ahead and actually just laid Nebraska minus $1.39 on the money line. I think you'll start to see them kind of get in the direction we all figured they were going to be at the beginning of the season. But because of that reset, because you got a nice win against the Hoosiers, you get a weaker Rutgers team, now's the time to keep it going, and I think they do just that.
Danny, the Huskers a 3-point favorite on Friday night. Tonight, the Broncos a 3-point favorite against the Colts on Thursday Night Football in a game that is sure to feature some ugly offense based on what we've seen from both of these teams so far this season. It pains me to say as a Broncos fan, but what do you like tonight in Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, so I actually was looking forward to laying Denver minus 3 before the Jonathan Taylor news. When you lose a running back, unless it's Derrick Henry, at most it's going to impact the spread by about half a point. And that's kind of what you saw with this game, because a lot of shops went up to minus 3.5 in favor of Denver once that news was announced. But a lot of times you can plug and play with running backs. And Jonathan Taylor hasn't been doing anything special this year, and that's a big part of why they've struggled. So now you lose him, and they get the Philip Lindsay revenge game. Oh, baby, can't wait for that. But I do think it's a good spot here for your Broncos, Elijah. So I laid 3 at minus 115. The Colts have been a disaster. Denver needs this win here, even though they're, 2-2 right now. It's a disastrous 2-2, and you get another chance for redemption at home if you're Nathaniel Hackett. And if there's a team that can make you look like a decent coach on a short week, it's got to be the Colts and how they've looked thus far. So I like Denver here minus 3. I did a couple props as well. I did Russell Wilson over 19.5 completions at minus 130. Now, this number has jumped up to about 20.5. That's the highest I would play it. But Russell Wilson is only averaging 20 pass completions per game. That's not the number you expected to see out of him, nor should expect to see out of him as the season progresses, especially since you lost your number one running back in Javonte Williams. You're probably not going to want to run it as much with Melvin Gordon, who tends to fumble the ball a lot. And you're going against a Colts secondary that really hasn't been too strong. They're allowing opponents to complete 21 passes per game, and quarterbacks to complete 69% of their pass attempts, which is 27th worst. So after I was doing all my numbers and plugging it in, I thought this prop should be in the range of 21.5 to 22.5, and I got it at 19.5. So I think we see Russell Wilson at least get 21 completions in this game. And I also bet him over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I got it at plus 130. That number has come crashing down a lot because people have been betting it as well. But all opposing quarterbacks against the Colts, with the exception of Patrick Mahomes, have thrown at least 2 passing touchdowns against Indy thus far. Wilson finally threw 2 last week against the Raiders. And without, again, Javonte Williams, maybe they want to throw the ball more in the red zone. And the Colts have the second-best run defense in the NFL. However, opponents in the red zone against the Colts, when they make it there, are scoring 80% of the time. 80% of the time in the red zone, they're getting a touchdown against the Colts. I don't think they're going to want to run it as much down there. I think they'll be able to move the ball, so that means Russell will probably be throwing for passing touchdowns. So over 1.5 in that regard, and then him over 19.5 completion.
Danny Burke with us, Burke's Best Bets. Danny, a couple of minutes here. Danny with VSiN Sports Network. Who else do you like? What are you keen on this weekend in the NFL?
Yeah, I did a couple of teasers this week. The line shifted for the Tampa Bay Bucs game, but I do think Tampa Bay bounces back. I mean, Tom Brady's not going to lose 3 in a row, and he's not going to have that game be a loss to the Falcons. I get Atlanta's offense has been competent, but you're also without Patterson, and you're now going up against one of the best defenses. So when it was 8, I teased down the Bucs to -2 and paired it with the Vikings down to -1. Daniel Jones, all he needed to do was hand the ball off or do a bootleg against the Bears defense, and they had a lot of success. Now imagine what a Kirk Cousins offense with Dalvin Cook, with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, and an actually good offense is going to do. They love doing play action. Dalvin Cook's looking for a signature game this year. Now's the time to do it against a team he historically dominates. So tease down the Vikings, pair it with the Bucs, and then another spot I teased down the Bucs and paired it with the Packers. I get the Packers have looked horrible. I'm going to look to probably fade them in the future, but even though it's an international game, it's still the Giants, a very one-dimensional team. The Packers I teased down to -2. They'll win in an ugly way probably once again. Aaron Jones over 57.5 rushing yards. I also like that because the Giants are allowing over 5 yards per carry, and Aaron Jones has been one of the best running backs and making really the most just the best out of the limited situations he's been in. So that's the other teaser I like. And then I also went with the Dolphins -3 against the Jets. Yeah, yippee, you beat Mitch Trubisky and half of Kenny Pickett against the Steelers. You're still the Jets, and you look at Miami. No, they don't have Tua, but there's a reason Teddy Bridgewater's their backup, because he's a seamless plug-in into this offense. He's virtually the same quarterback as Tua, so I don't think that hinders anything, and you're getting a buy low spot on the Dolphins. And you call it the fallen hero theory, where the backup steps in, the team usually rallies around it. I think that happens with the Dolphins. And then the final one I got, boys, Ravens money line -165. I didn't want to mess with the 3. I feel like this is going to have a lot of shenanigans against the Bengals, being a division matchup in prime time. I think it's a get-right spot for the Ravens. They're better than what they led you to believe with their record and what they showed against the Dolphins and the Bills last week. So give me the Ravens on the money line. And also really quick, did Dameon Pierce under 16.5 carries? I'd go deeper, but I know we're running out of time here.
Danny Burke, VSiN Sports Network, at Danny Burke 5. Give him a follow, give him a listen. Weekends with VSiN. Danny, thanks for the time today.
You bet, fellas. Appreciate it.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Thursday road show. We're here at Seacrest Field. Lincoln High out here warming up here at Seacrest. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency if you're in Lincoln or surrounding areas. KFOR will have the broadcast tonight. East and Lincoln High. Should be a good ball game. Benny Nagoy, Malachi Coleman, two just stud D1 ballers. Malachi yet to make his call on where he'll play. Betty, Matt Campbell commit for Iowa State. So big thanks to Coach Barnett, Danny Burke, with the Vegas Inside there with VSiN Sports Network. Sirles kicked off this second hour. Get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Let us know what you think of Hail Varsity Radio. Good, bad, or ugly. We'll take the feedback and appreciate it. And you can find it also on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Tomorrow, Elijah, got your game face ready, as we'll be at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista.
Oh, you know it. I'm ready for so many fruity drinks with umbrellas.
I wasn't going to say anything. I mean, you can do the mojito how you want to do the mojito.
You know, I maybe we'll just stick with the Hail Ale for tomorrow night. Or it is technically October, and that means sober October, and I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to follow through with that or not this year. But maybe tomorrow night will be a good indication based on how the game goes.
You go ahead. I will cover you the other way. Let's hear one more thought from Mickey Joseph. We sent and played a little bit of his sit-down with Rivals National. But mindset this second half of the season, it's got to carry over tomorrow night for kickoff.
We talked to him a lot about working a certain way in practice to get yourself to play a certain way on Saturdays. And what I can do, I can't ask you to practice soft and play hard on Saturday. So everything we do, we're going to put stress and we're going to strain the finish. We're going to strain the finish in everything that we do. And you saw it Saturday, they strained the finish in the fourth quarter and made it happen. And it was like a big piano off their back, because now they see that they can do it. Because you have to understand, these kids, they've been beat up for years. Whoever been in this program for 5 years hadn't won over 20 games. You know, I won over 20 games my first 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, and so they hadn't. So you had to change the way they think. You know, and say, I'm gonna get you thinking a certain way, but giving them, encouraging them, you know, patting them on the back. Like today is positive day. My D-line coach is ready to tear into the D-line today. He says, is it positive Thursday? Yes, it's Wednesday, but it's positive Thursday. Because we're gonna come at you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but Thursday we're gonna start building you back up. But they, like I said, they want it. They want to be successful. They've been close. Now they see that, okay, we can win close games. This is how we do it. And finally, they had to do it differently than they've been doing it before. And they had to change. And they changed, and now they believe, like, okay, this is the right thing to do. So they prepared, and we're going to continue to coach them. We always coach them up into kickoff. And so we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, what has got us to be successful against Indiana, and we're going to try to do the same thing against Rutgers.
Mickey Joseph, Huskers in Piscataway. We're at the Hale Varsity Club tomorrow, 4 to 6. La Vista, come see us. So we get you ready for Nebraska and Rutgers. For Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, back at you tomorrow at 4 with Hale Varsity.